I was never afraid of storms, at least, not until that summer. It wasn't the thunder, the way it could split the air like an axe, or the way lightning turned the night into a terrifying strobe-lit stage. No, it was the change they brought, the way normal things twisted and turned in the fury of the wind. My cabin sits on the lake, a little wooden box perched on a bluff. Most days it feels like my own tiny island kingdom, with the smell of pine and the gentle lapping of waves. But that summer, something was off. The locals started talking about a shift in the weather, something in the air, whispers too strange to take seriously, until they weren't. It started small. One of those rocking chairs on my porch ended up facing the lake instead of towards the cabin door. I blamed the wind, figured it was strong enough to turn a whole chair around. Then came the scratching, long, deliberate, like claws on the window pane. At first I thought it was branches, maybe a curious raccoon, but the sound got louder. The storm hit fast. It was the kind of weather that makes you feel small, the world roaring around you. I always liked that, sitting safe and dry by the fireplace as the sky raged overhead. This time, though, there was a tightness in my chest, an echo of that scratching from nights before. I kept the blinds down. Better that way, I told myself. But every shadow in those flickering firelit corners seemed to move. The wind howled, turned a vicious, personal kind of angry, and then it stopped. Not the storm, but the wind. You know that eerie silence, the moment before the sky breaks open for real? The whole world holding its breath? That's when I heard the laugh. High and brittle, just outside my window. Not human. Maybe it was the way the lightning cracked just then, illuminating the empty yard for a second, but I swear I saw something. It was a shape, tall and wrong, hunched by the water's edge. Then it was gone, swallowed by the thrashing rain. My heart was a rabbit in my chest, but beneath the fear was anger, the hot sting of being made small in my own house. Maybe a mix of that and plain foolishness. I pulled open the door. The storm was back in full force, the wind a physical wall pushing me back. The rain lashed my face, blinding me. The only thing I could make out was what wasn't there. No weird shapes, no clawing hands, nothing. "Who's there?" I shouted, the words ripped away by the gale. Ridiculous, I know, but I felt less alone just for having yelled. I stumbled back inside, slamming the door against the night. The rest is a blur, sitting by the dying fire, listening to the rain pound the roof. I told myself it was nerves, the isolation, the storm itself. Even as whispers of the locals' words came back, something was in the air. When morning came, it felt like a fresh start. Pale sunlight, the lake a choppy mess, but still mine. Checking the perimeter, I found it. A single, impossibly deep footprint sunk into the soft earth by the water. It wasn't human, and it wasn't an animal I recognized. I don't live at the cabin anymore. Some nights, when a storm is building and the wind picks up, I think I hear that scratch on my apartment window, that inhuman laugh. And I wonder, was it the storm that changed, or something carried in on the wind? The rain lashed against the windshield, blurring the road into a ribbon of gray. Thunder boomed, a guttural roar chasing the flash of lightning that split the night. I hated driving in storms like this, but it was either brave the downpour or camp out on the side of the road. Besides, I was only 20 minutes from home. Something flickered in my headlights. A figure hunched by the roadside, their silhouette barely visible against the darkness. A pang of sympathy shot through me. Stuck out here? That was rough. I slowed down, debating whether to stop. It was late, and being alone and a woman, it made me hesitate. But a nagging guilt tugged at me. What if they were hurt, or desperate? I wasn't the type to pass by someone in need. I pulled over with a sigh, throwing on the hazard lights. As I grabbed my umbrella from the back seat, the figure turned towards the car. And that's when I saw it wasn't a person at all. Under the flickering car lights, it looked almost like a scarecrow, tattered clothes hanging limp on a gaunt frame. But it was the face. Blank cloth stretched over what should have been eyes and a mouth, yet somehow it seemed to watch me with disturbing intensity. Panic flared. I yanked the car door shut, fumbling with the lock. My pulse hammered against my eardrums. Think. Then the figure moved. It wasn't the jerky motion of a scarecrow caught in the wind. It was a smooth, deliberate glide, far too human for something made out of straw and sticks. I slammed the car into gear and peeled away from the curb. My rearview mirror showed the figure standing in the road, the headlights washing over its unnaturally long limbs. It didn't move, just a silent sentinel watching me disappear into the storm. The rest of the drive was a blur of rain and white-knuckled terror. I kept imagining that face, the blankness that was somehow more unsettling than any grotesque feature could have been. Bursting through my front door, I slammed it shut, leaning against it as though the flimsy wood could keep whatever that was out there. My apartment, usually a sanctuary, felt cold and exposed. I pulled the curtains, half expecting to see that faceless figure staring back at me through the rain-spattered glass. It didn't appear, of course. Logically, I knew it was probably some twisted prank, teenagers scaring people on the lonely road. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd stumbled across something not of this world, something ancient and alien, hiding in plain sight. That night, every creak of the house, every flicker of lightning sent shivers down my spine. I barely slept, the image of that blank-faced figure haunting my dreams. In the stark light of morning, the world seemed more rational. I almost laughed at my fear, chalking it up to the darkness and raging storm. Yet, even as I drove the highway the next day, I found myself scanning the shoulder, a nagging unease prickling at the back of my neck. And that night, as another storm rolled in, a strange compulsion made me look out my window towards the darkened road. A flash of lightning, and there, outlined for a split second against the storm clouds, was that long, unnaturally thin silhouette. It was gone the next moment, but I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, it had been watching. The thundercrack split the night, closer this time. A shiver rippled through me, not from the cold, but from the echoing silence that followed. I should have been home by now, but this downpour had me huddled on the porch of an abandoned farmhouse, the rain lashing around me like 1,000 angry needles. Miles back, my car had sputtered and died, some nameless electrical fault drowned by the storm. With cell service a distant fairy tale in these remote hills, I'd hiked for what felt like hours, the darkness broken only by flashes of lightning that turned the world into a stark, terrifying negative image. This farmhouse had offered a flicker of hope. Yet, even as I crouched under the weathered porch roof, the rain seeping through my soaked clothes, unease festered. The empty windows were like dead, staring eyes, and the rotting wood whispered of decay and secrets. I was safer from the elements, but not from the creeping sense that I wasn't alone. Not alone in the normal sense, anyway. Another lightning flash. In that brief illumination, something moved across the far end of the porch. A trick of the light? A scurrying animal seeking shelter? My heart thudded against my ribs, and my hand instinctively reached towards the empty holster on my belt. Being a park ranger, I never hiked without my gun, but tonight, of all nights, I left it in the car. The rain intensified, a relentless roar threatening to drown out anything else, but, even through the cacophony, I heard it. It was a soft, dragging sound, like someone or something limping across the porch floorboards. Logic screamed that it was just storm debris, the wind playing tricks, yet every fiber of my being was on high alert. Another flash of lightning. Something stood silhouetted in the open doorway. Not an animal, no, it was too tall, too elongated. Its shape was warped and distorted in the flickering light. Terror spiked through me, a primal instinct to flee, even back into the raging storm. It didn't move, instead it just watched me with an unnerving stillness. Then, as the light faded, it spoke. Not words as such, but a rasping, chilling sound that seemed carved from the storm itself, a sound that sent another wave of primal fear washing over me. My soaked boots slipped on the porch as I backed away, fumbling for the doorknob that refused to open. Panic blurred my vision. The thing was moving again, its impossibly long arms catching the next flash of lightning as it glided towards me. And then, as if summoned by my desperation, the headlights of a truck cut through the downpour. The truck screeched to a halt on the muddy road, its door flung open. I didn't recognize the man who jumped out, but he was the most beautiful sight I'd ever seen. "Get in," he yelled over the roar of the storm. I didn't hesitate. Stumbling, slipping, I scrambled across the open ground towards the truck, the farmhouse and its silent watcher fading behind me. I collapsed into the passenger seat, the door slamming, and we sped off into the night. The man, who turned out to be a local farmer, drove in tense silence for a while before offering me a battered flask. "Take a swig," he said, his voice gruff. "You look like you saw a ghost." I did, or something else. I managed to choke out the story of the abandoned house, the figure, and the sound. He listened without judgment, merely nodding as I spoke. When I finished, his hand tightened on the steering wheel. "There's things out there," he said finally, his eyes fixed on a storm-lashed road. "Things older than these hills. Best not to go poking around where they sleep." We drove on, the rain abating to a drizzle. Safe, warm, the terror started to fade. But that night, lying in my own bed, I couldn't shake the image of the farmhouse in that storm, and of the silent sentinel that watched me from its doorway. A reminder that, out there, in the vast forgotten corners of the world, there are things that defy explanation. There are things that linger in the shadows of a storm-struck night.